We're continuing to get you ready for the NFL Combine, which starts this week in Indianapolis, with special guest Emory Hunt of Football Gameplan and CBS Sports. That's coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, and thank you so much for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first watch of the day if you're watching on YouTube, or your first listen of the day if you are listening to us on any of our podcast platforms. We are available everywhere for free. Subscribe to us, like us, give us your feedback. We appreciate it all. And today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you in part by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Giant fans. So on today's show, we are getting you ready for the NFL Combine. It starts Tuesday. Everybody's going to be flying into Indianapolis, and the NFL is going to have their annual combine. It's back after taking a year off. And I'm going to have Emory Hunt of Football Gameplan and also CBS Sports. It's been a long time since Emory's been on the program with me, but he is here. He is back. He's going to give us his expert take on the various draft class positions, the prospects to watch, and so on and so forth. We'll also talk a little bit about Giants. We'll talk about Giant needs and all that good stuff, because Emory does cover the Giants as well. And one other thing before we get into the interview with Emory, make sure you stick around at the end of the show, because for those of you who follow me on YouTube, you probably know that I have hit over 2,500 subscribers, which means I am halfway to the goal of 5,000. Now, as I promised you, when I hit 2,500 subscribers, I was going to reveal what the giveaway is going to be, what the incentive giveaway is. And this time, it's not what Locked On's going to do for me. It's what I'm going to do for my listeners, and not just my listeners on YouTube, but also my listeners all over. So I will have those details for you at the end of the program. Make sure you tune in and stick around for that. And hopefully you will like what I have planned. So, all right, Giant fans, without any further ado, let me get into the interview with Emory Hunt. All right, Giant fans, welcome back. I am Patricia Traina, and this is the Locked On Giants podcast. And joining me, in case you haven't, you've forgotten who he is, he's Emory Hunt, Football Game Plan, the best dressed man on the New York Giants beat. This guy shows up looking dapper every weekend, looks dapper even now for a podcast, a late night podcast taping. And Emory, my friend, it's been a long time. So nice to see that smile.
It has been a long time, and it's so long that we're now doing video as opposed to the audio. But it's dope to see you still crushing it as usual. And, hopefully I can get back to the Giants, games. I missed that. I missed our little community. But, it's football season all year round. And I'm just excited to talk ball with you as always.
Yes, and I'm glad to have you with me as we get ready for the NFL Combine. It's a big event, of course, for the league. Everybody's going to pile into Indianapolis. And Emory, let's kind of, recap first what's going on with the Giants. Let's start there, because, brand new sheriff in town with Joe Shane, new head coach with Brian Dable, basically, and they brought in the young man from Philadelphia, Brandon Brown. So they've got some interesting philosophies that they're merging together. What do you like so far about this group that ownership has put together?
That one, they kept Thomas McGahee. Always been a fan of Coach T-Mac and special teams. That's a huge part of the Giants and what they do, number one. Number two, Wink Martindale, defensive coordinator, huge fan of what he does and how aggressive he is, just bringing a different mindset. Even though I like Patrick Graham and what he did, I thought he was stabilizing the team, which if they didn't have Patrick Graham, that team would have had the first overall pick last year. So Wink Martindale gets a very good defensive unit, and Daboll, we'll see what happens with the quarterback situation, or just the offense. What Daboll will have that Joe Judge didn't have. He'll have a healthy Saquon Barkley, which is a great starting point for an offense, and have some work withable pieces on offense. So I'm excited for potentially what could be a bounce back year for Big Blue.
And it's interesting because the coaching staff and also the front office, you're talking about successful programs. The Eagles are not too far removed from a Super Bowl. Howie Roseman has always done a pretty good job with their draft picks. The Buffalo Bills, where Shane and Daboll came from, been in the playoffs the last 3 years. The Ravens, they've had one of the top defenses. Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator, coming from the Chiefs. I mean, that's a lot of firepower coming from winning organizations. How important do you think that is for the Giants, who are basically at rock bottom at this point?
It's huge. And I think if you are a Giants fan, you should be more excited about Joe Shane than anything because of what he is coming from. And you could say, well, you look at Buffalo, and what I love about what the Bills were doing, they were drafting to the coaching style, and that's what coach says, hey, I need these type of guys. They go out and get those type of guys. And so the front office was working with the coaching staff, which is huge. You know what I mean? And so Brandon Beane is the GM over there in Buffalo, but amongst the staff, everyone is all working together. And you look at, the fact that they can go out and get, hey, we want versatile guys on the back end, guys who can play, corner and safety. Well, let's go out and get these guys, whether it's free agency or let's draft guys. Hey, we want this body type for our defensive ends. Okay, well, let's go get this body type for the defensive ends. And when you have the front office and the coaching staff on the same page, in terms of, hey, I can coach this. This is what I need for the system or the scheme, or this is the type of player we want. And the front office, like, check. Okay, let's go get that. That's ultimately what you want. And that's why you look at certain teams like New England, Pittsburgh, Baltimore. They're always in the playoffs, are always competing for championships, or are going deep in the playoffs. They have that lockstep unity between the front office and coaching staff. You never hear those organizations, any leaks coming out talking about, well, the front office wanted this, but the coaching staff didn't want this player. You never hear that from those programs, which is why they're always competitive and always good.
Yeah, indeed. Now, Emory, we're going to talk about the combine and the draft and coming up in the program, but I want to get your take on some of the developments with the Giants. Specifically, Daniel Jones didn't quite take the leap I think everybody was hoping he would take last year. He was in year 2 of the same offensive system, saw some of the same problems that were popping up in the past with slow mental processing and decision making and whatnot. And of course, you have the health issue. The Giants seem committed to Daniel Jones this year. They're talking about, building an offense around what he likes to do, what he feels he does best. They're talking about obviously upgrading the offensive line, which Lord knows needs to be done. I think we can all agree on that. And tweaking, that offense, some of the skill position players. So that said, I mean, when you look at the career Daniel Jones has had thus far, are you convinced that he's just been a victim of being screwed, like John Mara said? Or is he just not that guy and they're just kind of beating their heads against the wall because maybe this quarterback class in the draft isn't as good?
It's the latter. I think they're just beating their head against the wall because you are what you are. And let's look at the common denominator in all that has been ever so changing with the Giants. And Daniel Jones, he was turning the ball over under Pat Shurmur. He was turning the ball over under Joe Judge. And you could pretty much safely bet that he will turn the ball over under Brian Daboll. So, they've done a lot. They've gone through 15 different offensive linemen. They've gone through 15 different wide receivers. They've gone through 15 different coaches. It's the elephant in the room. It's the guy that handles the football every play. And the most consistent thing about Daniel Jones has been his inconsistency and his inability to stay healthy for a full 17 game season. And that inability to depend on the guy to be there week in, week out. So you can't even see progress because he's going to miss some time and have to hit reset. They can't win with that. I think, and we know they're probably not going to go quarterback in first round, but what we do know is that the Giants really need to upgrade their QB2 spot. And there are some quality quarterbacks in this draft class that gives them a much better bang for their buck than a Jake Fromm or a newly signed Davis Webb. So getting a solid QB2, guys that can, guys, I would target guys that have played a lot of games, started a lot of games in college that have been successful. And I tweeted this out a couple months ago. Someone like Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati, while he may not be a first round type pick or whatnot, he is someone that can play, the bus driver of an offense. He's done that at Cincinnati, had that team in the playoffs. You want guys that play winning football. And I think if they can do that, solidify their QB2 spot, if Daniel Jones misses a game or two, you at least know someone that has played in a lot of big games can help you until he gets back, but also can be that bridge quarterback until you find a draft class that has top tier talent that you can go in. Because again, under Daniel Jones, they've been picking in the top 5, top 10 since he's been the starting quarterback.
Which is kind of scary if you think about it. But let me ask you this. I mean, would it make more sense then to maybe go and get a veteran to push him? Somebody who has a little better one-loss record than a Mike Lennon, somebody who can, if he has to step in because Daniel Jones can't play, there's not going to be a huge drop-off?
The ideal quarterback, and I don't know if he's available in free agency, Marcus Mariota would be perfect for what Brian Daboll wants and how he can execute. And I don't know if he's going to stay out there in Vegas, but that would be the veteran. That would be a good type of, maybe a redemption act, or at least at worst, a bridge quarterback. Because if you want an athletic guy back there, that takes out like your Teddy Bridgewaters, it takes out, guys that aren't really known for taking off and being an asset in the run game. And that's what Daniel Jones gives you. That's not what the other guys on the roster give you. You're not getting that from Fromm. You're not getting that from Davis Webb. So it has to be someone that has mobility and someone that has enough skill set to at least be a slight upgrade than Daniel Jones. And for my money, I would probably go out and get a Marcus Mariota if he's available. But until we know who's available, that changes that makes that whole dynamic a little bit murky.
I think he is going to be an unrestricted free agent. I'm pretty sure he is. And he's actually a guy that I've said I would like to see the Giants maybe look into. I know a lot of people say Mitchell Trubisky, but how many Buffalo quarterbacks are you going to bring down from, at this point? Mariota is a guy that definitely intrigues me. Now, let me ask you about the offensive line here, because this is a hot topic, obviously. Andrew Thomas, we can say, is a lock, barring any kind of setbacks with the ankle surgery he recently had. But the rest of the line is kind of in flux. Now, I am of the opinion, and you tell me if you disagree, that the Giants have to mix in veterans with draft picks. They can't go all draft picks. They can't go all veterans. They got to mix it up. The problem is if you look in the draft, and I, disclaimer, folks, Emory's still in the process of being in his lab and grading, and I don't think he's gotten to offensive line yet. But I'm going to ask you, generally speaking, based on what you do know from the All-Star games to Senior Bowl and whatnot, there's probably two guys, Evan Neal and Ikwano, that are legitimate top 10 picks. And then afterwards, it's like kind of iffy. That being said, Emory, I mean, what do you do if you're the Giants? How do you approach this? Do you say, okay, we're going to go out and we've got to sign an interior guy who can play all three spots, and then hopefully we pick up a tackle in the draft? I mean, how do you approach it if you're the Giants?
Well, I think the Giants are not in dire situation like fans like to make it seem like they are. Your quarterback has a lot to do with how bad the offensive line looks, number one. But you also get Nick Gates back from injury. You get Shane Lemieux back from injury. You get Matt Parrott back from injury. So the latter two are young prospects that have talent, that have started some games and shown well. Gates was the center, and that changes everything. You could still bring back Billy Price, who looked solid when he was out there and had a little bit of redemption for himself. But if you're looking in the draft, if you're looking versatility, you're looking for, someone that could. Zion Johnson is, someone to keep an eye on out of Boston College. Can play guard, center, or tackle. And I think when you have the luxury, so to speak, of having two top 10 picks that are so close together, I think you may split this between the coordinators. Okay, who you want on offense, who you want on defense, and we'll split these two top 10 picks. One to go to defense, one to go to offense. And I think they'll do it that way instead of doubling up on one side of the football. But the Giants do have some options. They got some young talent that they have on the roster that are coming back from injury. They have some guys that stepped in via free agency short notice, like Billy Price. You have Andrew Thomas. So I think they're in a much better shape than people give them credit for.
Okay, I mean, interesting. I get some of these guys signed back, but some of these guys that are coming off injuries, you mentioned Matt Parrott. He was hurt late in the year. Nick Gates, I mean, I'm hoping he's ready. I saw him towards the end of the year, and the guy was limping. He was walking without any kind of aids, but he was limping. Shane Lemieux should be back, but I don't know. I thought they could have upgraded from him anyway. But going to be interesting to see how they approach that offensive line. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, but without the calories and without the sugar. Most Built Bars contain around 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein, making it easy to stick to any diet plan. And they're available in nut and nut-free variety with different rotating flavors in addition to their core 9 flavors. So head on over to BuiltBar.com and use our special promo code LOCKED15 to save 15% off your first order. That's code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. Emory, let's turn to the defense, because this is a big debate I think a lot of people have. Sort of like which came first, the chicken or the egg. The pass rush, as we know, hasn't been very good. And I saw a statistic, I believe it was ESPN's pass rush win rate. And the Giants were either 30th or 31st, which means they're not getting home. Now, Wink Martindale, you mentioned you liked him. Down in Baltimore, he was known for getting pressure on the quarterback. Not necessarily, I guess, with a Batman and Robin type pass rush, but with a good secondary. So if you're looking at the Giants and their needs, do they have a good enough secondary to hold the coverage long enough for the guys up front to get home? Do they need to get guys who are quicker up front? I mean, where do they need to really attack that pass rush to make it, decent again?
I think they have to get at least one dog at the second level. I love what they did last year with Azeez Ojulari. He seemed to always be in the mix for a sack or getting a sack. They got great play from Quincy Roche, who was an undrafted free agent with Pittsburgh. They signed him off the practice squad. He contributed well. He's someone that can get to the quarterback. You got Ellerson Smith later in the year coming off the injury. So you have some young, withable pieces, but they need someone that can really bring it. So again, if you're looking at pick 5 or pick 7, if the draft is dumb, like the draft tends to be, and for whatever reason, a Kayvon Thibodeau is sitting there, that gives the Giants a chance to get what they missed out on when they wanted to get Chase Young, right? Gives them a premier option at pass rusher. Or if you grade out one of these corners, because again, you like Bradbury, you like what you got from McKinney in terms of being a move piece complete. He could be that Jordan Poyer or that Micah Hyde for this defense. But you don't really trust Adoree Jackson's health. Like he's either in or he's out, right? So if you can get another bona fide stud to go with Bradbury, now you're cooking with grease in terms of 2 matchup corners, 2 man corners that can press. And now you can kind of work in, Adoree Jackson. You can work in Aaron Robinson if he's come back, or you have your the kid from UCLA,
Darnay Holmes.
So I think they do need a corner. They definitely need someone at the second level. There's a linebacker if you want to get, creative and have a dog in the middle of that defense. I think that's another option for them as well. There's some backers that can blitz and bring it. So there's a lot of different ways they can go with that. And it's right. Do you need a pass rush? Do you need corners? Either one is fine because either one helps out the other. Your pass rush doesn't matter if you have Deion Sanders and, Eric Allen on the corners, right? And your corners don't matter if you got Reggie White and Bruce Smith on the edges, right? So it's 6 one way, half dozen another. Either way, they have to get an impact player at one of those two positions.
Now, you mentioned Bradbury. I found that interesting because Bradbury's in the top 5 of cap hits. I'm not so sure they keep him at over $20 million a year. So if they do move him, I mean,
that puts it square in. If they do move on from him, then the Giants are taking a corner at 7.
Okay, I was going to say, do they maybe move Aaron Robinson to that spot and maybe get a cornerback later in the draft? I mean, I know Aaron Robinson in college was primarily a slot guy, but does he have the skill set to maybe be more of an outside, be on that island?
Well, it depends. And the way the NFL is played now, it's primarily in the middle of the field. So you need 3 guys you consider starters at that position. Because with teams like the Rams or teams like Cincinnati, what they do, their third receiver is better than your third corner. So you better have 3 legit number ones out there at corner. So if Robinson can play, you still need another one. It's like you have to really load up on corners and coverage safeties more so than anything in today's game.
All right. Now, Emory, I want to touch a little bit on the draft prospects. And again, disclaimer, folks, Emory is still grading different positions. I think he's working his way through offense. So, but you've been to the All-Star games, you've been to the Senior Bowl, you've been to the NFLPA Bowl, the Shrine and all those other things. Who are some of the guys that you are seeing that are just, maybe weren't on your radar initially that you think, gosh, these might be good fits for the Giants?
Yeah, it's been a lot. And we said this last year because of the guys going back to college with the COVID year and getting a free year. This is going to be the deepest draft class. At full disclosure, right now I'm grading. I'm about a third of the way, 3/4 of the way through wide receivers, and so that means I've graded quarterbacks, running backs, fullbacks, tight ends, and about to wrap up wide receivers. The draft guide is right now at that position 400 prospects. So I haven't even touched O-line in the entire defense. So you can imagine what this thing is going to look like when it's done. So there's a ton of talent. And let's say you're looking at the Giants in terms of guys that can be there and that can help this team out. You look on defense, Marquise Bell out of Florida A&M was at the NFLPA Bowl. And he is someone that had a stellar All-American career at Florida A&M as a safety. You go out there to the NFLPA, he's playing outside corner, and he's doing a fantastic job. So now you have someone that can press, that can play any one of the positions in secondary, that can help you out, keeps you versatile. That seems like the type of guy that Brian Daboll and Joe Shane would want on their team, a positionless player, right? You go down to the Senior Bowl. Obviously, the talk of Mobile was Jermaine Johnson from Florida State. He was winning every pass rush drill, and I know that's, heavily favoring the defense because it's one-on-one. But even in team drills, he was slaughtering offensive linemen. He could be in play for the Giants at number 7 if Kayvon Thibodeau goes higher or whatever. In that sense, at the Shrine game, going back to the defensive side of the football, there's a corner that is feisty. He's brash. He was awesome out there, and that was the Kobe Durant out of South Carolina State. I've said this before. He reminded me so much of Eric Allen, and he I interviewed him out there. He was like, they want me to play slot corner only because I'm 5'9", 185. See, I'm an outside corner. I don't care how tall I am. I want to be on the outside. And lo and behold, they had him in practice on the outside. He was holding his own. So I'm excited about this cornerback group. And up front along the offensive line, going back to the Senior Bowl, Jatari Court out of Southern. He was a left tackle at Southern. And then at the Senior Bowl, they had him playing guard. They had him doing some stuff at center. So if you imagine what it takes to be a left tackle, footwork, agility, the ability to anchor, and you put that inside, man, you got a fantastic, pass blocking guard, with some athleticism. So I was excited to see him go out there and compete. And the HBCU Legacy Bowl, I was there last week, and there, it's amazing. You just see the amount of talent. The Sean Dixon from Norfolk State. He was also at the East-West Shrine Bowl. 6'5", 260, been in the weight room. You could tell he's built like Myles Garrett in terms of physically fit, and was terrorizing on one end. On the other end was his teammate Chris Myers, who's also 6'5", 250. So Norfolk State had two NFL prospects at DN, both long, athletic, and they wreck shop in practice. And we thought, it was just one-on-ones. They go into the game, and the quarterbacks barely could get a pass off. So, those are guys that may be in that third or fourth round range that the Giants could sneak up and get, that could bring good ability off there. So this is a fantastic. I'm excited to dive on defense because I know what's already waiting for me on that side of the ball.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some good prospects on there, and I think it's funny when we're recording this on Friday, and we just had a call with Daniel Jeremiah, and he said the defensive side of the ball, especially like the edge rushers, that's a deep. I mean, you're talking 3 rounds deep potentially there. So it sounds like, and some of these inside linebackers who might be in the top 10, they could drop. So it sounds like there's a lot of goodies there for a team that needs help on defense. But Emory, I want to go back to one position I know you did great, tight ends, because this has been kind of a debate, not so much amongst Giant fans, but I've seen opinions stated that the Giants should re-sign Evan Ingram. I know, horrors, right? The Giants should re-sign Evan Ingram and not draft a tight end. Now, the Buffalo Bills offense last year ran 11 personnel 71% of the time, which is the most in the league. And I believe the Chiefs, I don't remember what the percentage was, but I do remember they were like seventh most highest use of 11 personnel, which suggests that for the Giants offense, they're going to need more in terms of receivers than so much tight ends. So that being said, Evan Ingram is going to be an unrestricted free agent. I don't think Kyle Rudolph will be back. I'm not so sure if Caden Smith his knee is going to allow him to continue to pass a physical or whatnot. Would you re-sign Evan Ingram if you're the Giants, or is there someone better in this draft class at tight end that you think you could swap him out for?
Well, first of all, you love the kid Evan Ingram. Good kid. For the right price, you bring him back because he does have some talent. The inconsistencies is what will keep you to not trusting him long term. So you probably could bring him back on a short term deal, and that won't keep you from drafting somebody too. So if they can double up on tight end, I think this is a draft to do so. There's a bunch of athletic guys. Greg Dulcich out of UCLA reminds me a lot of George Kittle. You see someone that enjoys blocking, is enthusiastic about it, but very mobile, great run after catch option. He's more of an H-back. So you can kind of get 2 H-backs out there if you bring back Ingram. This was funny because at the NFLPA, all you heard leading up to these All-Star games that the Senior Bowl has a great group of tight ends. You get out to the NFLPA game, you're like, damn, this is a really good group of tight ends. Then I leave there and go to the Shrine game, like, whoa, this is a fantastic group of tight ends. And then you finally get to the Senior Bowl. It's like, man, I've been seeing fantastic tight ends at all these stops. It wouldn't surprise me to see either the Giants clean house in that room and bring in 3 rookies, or bring back Ingram, bring back another veteran, and then double up in a draft with guys that can move and get down the field.
Yeah, I can just see it now. If the Giants bring back Evan Ingram, you could get a lot of people who are going to be like, what are they doing? And you're right. Evan, he's a good kid. I almost feel bad saying that, but the inconsistencies, my gosh, they just drove you mad. I
They
mean,
come at the worst times too.
and they came at the worst possible time. So that said, let me ask you about the receiver core, because this is a pretty deep class of receivers. Obviously different flavors, different sizes, different skill sets and whatnot. Last year, the Giants receiver core, they were banged up. Let's call it for what it is. They were also part of that antiquated system that Jason Garrett ran. Kenny Galladay's not going anywhere because of the cap hit. I don't think Sterling Shepard will be back. I suspect Darius Slayton will be back, but I'm not sure. I would say he's a number 3, or at this point. Kadarius Toney, we didn't really get to see enough of because of injuries. That said, I mean, what kind of receiver do you think the Giants might look for if they're going to round out that group and swap out, say, Shepard, who made his living in the slot, but wasn't really as effective, I think, on the outside. Now that they have Tony's more of the slot guy, but what do you think they need at that receiver core?
Guys that can play all three. And I know that's one thing. Now Chicago Bears receivers coach Ty Tolbert preached, we need guys to understand concepts and not be relegated to, oh, I'm a slot guy, or I'm an X, or I'm a Z. So I would suspect, the Giants to go and find guys that can line up in all three and play all three. So therefore, you're always in a good play. And right now, you look on the roster, you're like, okay, who can do that? And you like Tony because he's new, he's agile, he's when he was out there healthy, he was someone that was making plays. And so now you need to find more players like that. And they have some young talent that's there. I'm a big Colin Johnson fan. I like what he brings to the table. He's kind of cut from the mold of Kenny Galladay, but cheaper. And you really have to find a lot of these receivers that can, line up on either side, off the line of scrimmage, on the line of scrimmage, in the slot. And there's a bevy of receivers that can fill the void. This is talk about how deep the corners are. Receivers are just as deep, and that's going to always be the case because of the nature of college football. And so many teams using 4 and 5 wide receiver sets. Teams are deep at receiver.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline.net is also the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news, whether it's basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, plus your favorite Vegas games. Head on over to their website today and learn more about the trends and actions. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, now I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Saquon Barkley. You mentioned before he was coming back off the ACL. He had the sprained ankle. There's talk that they might look to move him in a trade because he's a luxury. Some people are of the opinion that, you're asking a lot of Dable to magically wave a wand and make Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, for that matter, into a solid 1-2 punch. But when you look at Saquon and the journey that he's had and what you have seen of him on the film, is he at the point now where you say, okay, you know what, he's taken quite a bit of a beating, all lower body injuries to his legs, his knees and whatnot. Maybe he's never going to be the same guy he was in 2018.
No, I still believe in Saquon. And the thing is, there were, I've had an ACL tear twice. So I know the mindset of what he was going through, trusting the knee. There were spurts where you saw him trust it. Like there was a couple games where you watched and you're like, man, old Saquon would have seen that cutback and bounced it and was gone. This Saquon wanted to play it safe because he didn't know if that was going to re-injure the knee, even though you're medically cleared to go. It's all mental, right? The Saints game was an example of old Saquon being back, where he's making explosive plays, both in the run game, had a big reception downfield. I think that was almost the game winner, put them ahead. So when you see those things, it's back to him. And then all these have been the freak injuries. So I think he'll be back to what he has been before. And that's just you don't want to get into the habit of getting rid of good players. And Saquon is a really good player, a difference maker. And people always want to put the focus on Saquon, the offensive line, the receivers. Put the focus where it needs to be. The guy controlling the football every play is not good. So that ruins everything. This was an offense that at one time had Odell and Saquon. And they ran off Odell. They want to run off Saquon because they didn't want to say Eli wasn't that good at that point of his career. Now they're doing the same thing with Saquon and Daniel Jones. Stop running off good players. So I say Saquon should be back to what he was because he's now a year removed from that knee injury. And so mentally it's not going to be about them. I will say this, though. A part of me feels like he's carrying too much weight. Mm-hmm. I feel like if he can get down to about 225, 220 instead of 230, 235, whatever he is, that'll help him because he's such an explosive runner. And the amount of force he's putting on his knees and ankles with how explosive he is in terms of how his cuts and all that good stuff like that. If you could drop a few, I think that'll help him out long term. I just think he's probably a little bit too muscular right now for his own good.
That's a good observation. It's actually one that I've thought of too, but I figured, okay, maybe that helps him when he's got to run through traffic. But I guess, when you're coming off an injury, and plus as you get older and you're a football player, you want to lose weight and bulk, not necessarily go the other direction because it does take you longer and it does slow you down, somewhat. So final question for you, Emory. So with the combine coming up, is there any player in particular, any player group that has you most excited? Maybe a group that would tie in nicely with what the Giants need?
I would say the pass rushers. One name to keep an eye on, Emory Barno out of Virginia Tech. He's twitched up. He has that dog mentality. So Wink Martindale will love him. And every time something was going wrong, he was disrupting it. He was the one that was bringing pressure at Virginia Tech. So I'm excited to see how he does in the drill. You always want to see who's the fastest in terms of running. There's a couple of candidates. Calvin Austin is the track guy, all-American track guy. So I think he's going to hit 4 too. And he gives you another. He's another slot guy almost. He's literally 170. So he could legit fly, but he was outstanding at Memphis. And you want to see how athletic the offensive line group is. And I talked about Jatari Carter, but I also want to see, Penning from Northern Iowa and how athletic he can be in the bag drills and all that, because he was outstanding at the Senior Bowl in terms of, getting to fights every day, having everybody wanting to fight him. So that's always a good thing to see.
Yep. They call it the underwear Olympics because, you've got all these drills and stuff, but they do tell a little bit. They do give you a little bit of insight into what a guy, like with explosiveness and that sort of thing, agility and that sort of thing. So, it's not like it's, all for naught. So,
right.
Should be interesting. It's, Combine's back. It wasn't available last year because of the pandemic, and it's back. It's always a fun time, obviously, and Emory, I know you'll be out there and you'll be doing your thing. And also, folks, if you didn't know, Emory's on CBS Sports. Does a great job. See, I told you one day that you were going to be a big shot. I told you. And, of course, you kept your word. You still remember the little people like me.
Now, listen, you've always gave me props and always, kept my spirits up. And that's why I always will, show love and come on the show. And you're a good friend. And it is always great to see, good things happen to good people like yourself. So I'm always excited. And you guys will be able to see me on CBS Sports HQ all week, because I'll be up there on the stage with CBS Sports doing combine coverage all week long. So
that is so exciting. I am so proud of you. Seriously, I'm sitting here and I'm like, gosh, one of my brothers, because you mentioned our little family that we have. So we're like, brothers, and I'm the only sister, in the group because I'm the only woman. But
right.
It's like we have our own little family. I'm like, one of my brothers is going on to big time. So I'm really excited for you. That's awesome stuff. And Emory, tell everybody roughly when you're going to have your grades done and your annual draft guide out and where they can get that.
Yeah, usually I have it done before the combine, but the 17-game season, everything got pushed back. We had this All-Star game this in the middle of February, the HBCU Legacy Bowl. So that pushed everything back. So this time I'd say middle March. Give me about 2 weeks after the combine so I can grade all the defense. And so by the middle of March, we'll be good to go. And so they can pre-order that at footballgameplan.com/2022 draft guide. And you had one from last year, Pat. You know how big that thing is. This one's going to be even bigger.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That was a big one. That was I think you covered every conceivable player in that thing.
Last year was 650 players. The year prior was 720, I believe. This year I think we might get 800.
Wow. And there's not even like 800 draft picks either, but it's good for the undrafted free agents and stuff like that.
And people that pop up on the roster throughout the season.
Oh, awesome. I can't wait to see it. All right. I can't wait to get my copy. I'll have to reserve it. So, all right, Giant fans, you can follow him on Twitter. He's Football Game Plan. You can see him on CBS. You can see he's all over the place, and he's doing a fantastic job. And like I said, the best dressed man in the press box. Look at how sharp this dude looks. So, Emory, my friend, appreciate you for coming on. Giant fans, stay tuned after this. We're going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to have an announcement that I've been promising you now that we've hit 2,500 subscribers on YouTube. So stay tuned, and I will have that. But for the meantime, for Emory Hunt, I am Patricia Traina. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget Twitter Tuesday tomorrow and Combine coverage all this week. So we'll catch you then. All right, Giant fans, before we say goodbye for now, I promised you I would tell you what the giveaway is for when I hit 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. And that giveaway, ladies and gentlemen, is actually a copy of my book, autographed, specifically to the winner. So my book, The Big 50 New York Giants, Men and Moments That Made the New York Giants. You can see behind me, I have the poster on the wall back there. That's the cover. I have 5 copies that I am going to give away at random to listeners. Now, you don't have to be specifically a YouTube listener. You don't have to be specifically an audio listener. I'm going to pick 5 people at random. I'm going to open up a contest line. I'll have details in the show notes. When I get a little closer to 5,000 subscribers, I will pick 5 people at random. They will get an autographed copy of the book. You tell me how you want it signed. I will sign it. I will ship it. And I hope that you will enjoy it. You know, it'll be my way of giving you something because you guys have given me so much here at the Locked On Giants podcast, and it is so appreciated. So it's my pleasure to do something and give you guys something back in return rather than me get a mug or a lollipop or something like that. And, you know, we'll just keep on growing the show, hopefully, as best as we can. And hopefully I'll be around to give you guys much more content and answer your questions and all the things that we try to do here on the Locked On Giants podcast. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget, tomorrow, Twitter Tuesday, you know what the drill is. The instructions and the contact information is in the show notes. Get those questions into me. Let's see, if you get them into me by about 4 or 5 o'clock, I should be able to, let's say 5 o'clock. I will be able to get everything recorded and posted before the madness of the combine kicks in. And starting Tuesday is going to be a busy day. So please get that stuff into me and I will get those questions answered for you. So, all right, everybody, until tomorrow, have an awesome day.